Salem's Lot was so bad that I kind of wish that they put this thing in the vault.
Open.
What is up, Drive By Movies here, and you're watching
Fresh releases.
My name is James.
My name's Blaise.
And today we checked out the new horror film to reach Max, the remake of Salem's Lot.
It's not safe!
Another sleepless night, music song.
Salem's Lot is the Stephen King story about an author that returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover that the townspeople are being attacked by a bloodthirsty vampire. So James, this film I feel like has been in development for the longest time. We've had multiple Salem's Lots adaptations. I know there was 2 TV miniseries. One I think in the 80s, and then the other was I think the 90s or early 2000s with Rob Lowe, and then this is our 3rd iteration now. What did you think about this film?
Yeah, so I have no previous context of Salem's Lot other than just knowing that it was based off, I believe it's a short story by Stephen King and then was adapted into a longer story eventually. I could be wrong on that, and I of course know about the TV movie. I didn't realize that there was a second one actually. With Rob Lowe. That one I was unaware of. But yeah, I was excited for this one just because this was originally, I think, supposed to hit theaters. Could be wrong. It also could have been made for Max originally as well. But it's a movie that I'd always be checking up on just because I knew it was done and completed a while ago. So I'm not sure whether or not they were just taking time with all the visual effects or just the studio didn't believe in it or something. Because there's a lot of cool stuff within this movie. But it overall just feels like some of those mid to late 2000s studio horror films that just everyone hated, where it's just like they're trying too hard with this movie, and CGI is a big part of it, but also just not enough character development. But overall it's disappointing, not my favorite, but I didn't necessarily hate it though.
Yeah, I thought this had some cool vibes to it. It did do a lot of things that I kind of dislike, just the over colorization of the movie to try and set it, like in a kind of timeless period. I think it takes place in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, but I think they try and give it that like over colorization instead of, give it a sepia look, instead of actually just, dress the set properly or dress the set with proper colors. They just want to like over colorize everything. I always just hate that. I feel like that's just such a cheap way to like kind of get a mood or vibe across, as opposed to just doing it in production design and utilizing the full extent of your art department. But yeah, I feel like this movie just kind of shows the real problems that lie at Max, our Warner Brothers. And to get into just a slight tangent here about Uzumaki got released on Max. I don't know if you saw that, the Junji Ito story. Yeah. And I heard that the first episode is like amazing, like the animation's good, and then the second episode and anything else in it is like really bad, cheap animation. Like they didn't have enough of a budget or enough time, and they were given the ultimatum by Max to either, after greenlighting the first episode, they were given the you gotta either we're gonna scrap it, or you can finish it on whatever budget you have left, but it's not enough to really complete the show. So they had to pour blood, sweat, and tears into a show that's just not gonna be that good ultimately. I think this movie also just shows the greater problems at Max. It is just a mess over there at Warner Brothers, it feels like, and I think it's just bleeding into everything that they touch.
That's a shame because I feel like this movie could have been a hit with the right proper tender love and care. Unfortunately, vampires are never not going to be popular for the most part. Look at Underworld movies. Vampire movies weren't really popular for a while, and then Underworld came along, got however many sequels, just because it worked correctly with the budget that it was given, essentially. Then, you know, Twilight changed everything. Like, vampires have always been sexy. And I know that the director intended to make this movie a more horror-esque version, not so like sexual, I guess. That's fine. I'm not sure if the story calls for it based on the original novella or anything, but he did accomplish them being scary within this movie. Like, a lot of the yellow lights are images that will be in my head forever, but it's hard to make a movie like this scary when just all the blood looks fake, all the fire is over the top and just doesn't look realistic at all. Yeah, it's just the same problem that with like the Thing remake, or not remake, but prequel that came out a little over a decade ago. Just that had a cool story and like had the right pieces, I'd say, but just nothing feels like gripping with the characters, and then also just the CGI just takes you out, I guess. Like, you know, I'm not one to really hate on CGI like a lot of people. I'll always prefer practical effects, but just, yeah, there's just so many wrongs within this movie. It's just like, it feels like studio were just like, no, audiences loved it, so we need more CGI. Audiences loved it, so we have to base it off a Stephen King thing we can buy the rights of, and just, yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I have to say that it was pretty disappointing, just this movie. I think that there is some good things in it. I do really appreciate Bill Camp's performance. I thought like anytime he was on the screen, I was pretty much captivated, and it was cool to see him in just a role I wouldn't like really picture him in. I always like seeing, you know, like seasoned actors in, you know, genre flicks or movies where you're like, oh, I really wouldn't picture them actually doing a movie like that. I thought that was cool. There are cool setups. Like I thought the drive-in movie scene was like a cool, you know, set piece, and it was awesome. Like them utilizing like the trunks of the cars and stuff. And there are moments in the movie, but overall, like, I know you said you wouldn't bash on CGI. I think like I'm more than happy to bash on CGI. There is just not good CGI in this movie. Especially like when the vampires are like taking over the town. I think that just never really plays well in this story, because it's usually like rushed. Like, it feels like it's so rushed. I know that they said like they wanted to spend more time on that, but they're just limited by the runtime of a film. I thought this story has been done really well, and Mike Flanagan's kind of like iteration of Salem's Lot, it feels like Midnight Mass. It feels like his kind of love letter to Salem's Lot is Midnight Mass, and I honestly think Midnight Mass is a masterpiece. So it feels like maybe the miniseries format for Salem's Lot might work better in a way, but I do feel like Midnight Mass brought more to the table when it comes to, you know, like all the allegories for religion and, you know, the metaphors with this fallen angel. But yeah, I'd have to say, like, if you're gonna watch something that's kind of along this line, or you want something with vampires in it that are creepy and, you know, it's definitely, you know, well budgeted, I would say check out Midnight Mass on Netflix, because I don't think that Salem's Lot on Max was it.
Yeah, absolutely, because it has like the look of just like, oh, this looks like it's trying really hard to be, you know, like a really powerful film that might, like, you know, do the same thing what it captured, the first one at least, not so much the second one, but yeah, that there's a reason why it was dumped and stuff. And also just look at the cast, the kid from The Boys. If you watched season 4 recently, that kid's a teenager, and he's back to being a really little kid, like back from like season 2, season 3 days in this movie. So it just goes to show that this movie's been maybe not so much on the shelf, but it's been being worked on for quite some time. The fact that we had like a season and a half worth of footage of the kid for The Boys come out before like the same age of him in this movie just goes to show that, like, you know, what was going on with this movie. What's the original cut like? Is there an original style? Because also just that vampire, also just, that's, you got to have your main vampire looking awesome. And some of the like little like behind the shadow sequences, like, oh, I can't wait to see the full reveal. And then when you get it, you're just like, what? That's it? Like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, it just is kind of crazy. I feel like this film was just meddled with to death, and I'm actually even surprised, being that Warner Brothers has this track record of just, you know, killing something after it's totally finished. You know, we didn't get Batgirl, we didn't get the Coyote Looney Tunes movie. There's so many movies that Max and Warner Brothers just decided to entirely shelf and write off on their taxes. Guys, you should have just done it with this Salem's Lot. Honestly, I really wish that they hadn't ever started that trend of like, because I know Disney's done that too. Disney Plus has taken off like the Willow reboot. So it's just, it's a trend that I absolutely hate. But honestly, Salem's Lot was so bad that I kind of wish that they put this thing in the vault.
Yeah, damn, harsh words, but I'm not like disagreeing with you. I feel like maybe like tax write-off is a little harsh for this movie, but I'd say though your time is worth better than this movie. Honestly, it's just one of those movies that's not going to do anything for anyone. I feel like awesome if this is a film that maybe is a gateway into horror, just because this movie's got rated R style violence in it, but it never feels like rated R style violence as like crazy as like watching like a Saw movie or anything. Not that this movie needed that by any means, but just like, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't satisfy that gory audience, doesn't really satisfy the Stephen King audience. I feel like doesn't satisfy like film nerds or critics also, because I don't feel like anyone's really been mentioning how good this movie is. It's just a fine movie that's forgettable, and that's like almost one of the worst disrespects you can get these days, I feel like, because is going to be talking about this movie 10 years from now. They're already going to reboot it 10 years from now. Okay, so yeah, let us know what you thought about the movie. Great way to help support the show. If you have Max, check it out and leave a comment down below on what you thought about the movie.
And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
And speaking of updates, be sure to catch all our social media links down below for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, as well as our own personal Letterboxd accounts. That'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new video.